2020 began a challenging period in our history. Our way of life changed drastically. And for the Spiritualist community, we faced a challenge of having to close the doors of our churches. And of course, we're all worried what would happen to our congregations if we weren't able to see them and remain in contact with them. Thankfully, many churches had already got a strong social media presence and were able to use that to stay in touch, keep their congregations uplifted and informed. But something else happened during 2020. We discovered something that previously had only really been used by the business community, and that's Zoom. We've known about it in the Union for quite some time, and over the past few years, our online branch, SNUI, has been using Zoom to deliver services, lectures, talks, social events, demonstrations, assessment boards, all sorts of different ways that it's been used. But now many churches have started to use Zoom regularly to deliver their services. This has been fantastic, and the churches that have adopted this form of technology have been able to reach new audiences. People have been attending their services that have never attended the bricks and mortar church that they run. But also people who have never attended a spiritualist service before have been logging on. This is incredible, and I'd really like to encourage everyone to think of social media and now Zoom as a digital outreach tool, a tool that we can reach out into the wider community, create a new audience and let them know what spiritualism is about, what it feels like to be involved in the spiritualist community and why it will benefit their lives. We can use Zoom and social media as the shop window, if you like, for what goes on inside our churches. And our challenge going forward will be to encourage those new people to come through the doors of your church and be part of the community of your church. This is a great opportunity, and I hope that you will take the time to familiarize yourself with the potential of Zoom and take the leap and have a go at reaching a new audience with this new technology. Delivering a service over Zoom is very different to delivering a service in a church. First of all, we have to think about the technology involved. So we filmed this entire video using Zoom on our laptops. And we would strongly recommend that if you're going to be doing a service, then please use a laptop or a desktop. If you use a tablet or an iPad, and definitely if you use a mobile phone, you're going to have a very hard time because the screens are smaller and the apps are cut down versions of the desktop, laptop versions. You're going to find it harder to find the controls that you need, and some of the functionality is simply not there. So best to stick to a laptop or a desktop and you'll have a much better time. You also need to think about the structure of your service as well. We advise to keep it simple. Think about the various sections of your service and how they fit together, how you introduce one section, how you introduce the next. Your challenge is to make sure that the right person is on the screen at the right time. So you'll need to ensure that your chairperson is in view when they're talking and your speaker is in view when they are talking. One difficulty that we have in a spiritualist service is the demonstration. First of all, those of us who are mediums now know that the spirit world is perfectly capable of working with us over Zoom. They don't seem to mind that our recipient might be halfway across the world. As long as we have that connection through Zoom, they're happy. So we have to have the confidence to do that and to show that on our screens. But you will need to work out what that will look like in your Zoom meeting. So you have to think about, do you bring the recipient of a message onto the screen? And how do you show the interaction between the medium and the speaker? We'll cover that as we go along, which should help you. But most of all, we recommend that you practice. Please don't start to do a service having never practiced before. We all make mistakes, and so it's better to get them out of your system. So perhaps your committee and some invited volunteers can come along and you can have a practice. Spend time getting it wrong, and then you'll be able to get it right. But I would like to say personally, after chairing services pretty much every single week for the past year on Zoom, I still get it wrong sometimes. Sometimes Zoom lets me down. Sometimes I let myself down and press the wrong thing. That's normal. We're all human. And I think as you go along in this process of learning about Zoom, please cut yourself some slack. It's absolutely fine if you get something wrong. And all I do is just ask those watching to bear with me while I sort something out because I'm having a little bit of a technical glitch. No one seems to mind. And what's the important thing? The important thing is that it doesn't have to look like a highly polished TV production or someone reading the news. That doesn't matter. What matters is we're using this vehicle to reach out and connect with each other. We're keeping the community of spiritualism alive. And once we're back in our churches, let's face it, one of the big questions that we were worried about before the pandemic was, how are we going to attract new people into our churches? Well, Zoom is one of the tools that we can use to do that, to reach that new audience and help our churches to survive and to thrive. So I hope you'll take the leap and enjoy using Zoom, and soon you will get to grips with being able to deliver a service online, and I know that your congregation will appreciate it. Good luck, and if you need any help, we'll leave our contact details on the screen at the end of this video. We're here to help. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is to open an account with Zoom. I've opened my browser on my computer and I'm going to head over to zoom.us. There it is. This is the official website for Zoom where you can create a new account. It's worth noting that accounts are free, but they do limit you to a meeting of no longer than 40 minutes. Obviously, that's not enough. So we highly recommend that a church that is going to be doing Zoom services buys their own account. You only need one and you can share it between whoever is going to be running the service. They can have the login details for the church account and they will have full control over the meeting. And it also means that the restrictions have been moved because it's being paid for, about £12 a month, which we think is well worth it. And for that, you can have meetings that have no restriction on length, and you can have about 100 people in your services, which is more than enough for your average service. And also, there is no limit on the number of meetings that you can have. So you can use it for other things, such as committee meetings and so on. Once you're at the zoom.us website, click on the sign up button, this orange button here in the top right hand corner, and then follow the instructions to create the account. And you can enter the payment details as well if at this stage you are going to buy a paid for account. There's also a section on the Zoom website which is the download center, and when you go there to zoom.us/download, it will know what kind of machine you're on, whether it's Windows or a Mac. Download the Zoom client for meetings and follow the instructions once you've downloaded it by clicking on it and going through the process. This will install the program onto your machine, which acts as the control center for all of your Zoom meetings. Once you've got that installed, you're ready to move on to creating your meetings. When you first log into your Zoom account, you'll see your profile page. Just check all the information is correct there. And then what we need you to do is to make sure that your settings are correct. So on the left here in this column, we click on settings, and then we get a long list of all these settings. Now this might look bewildering. So what we've done, we've created a downloadable list of all the settings that we use, which balance accessibility and security. We want our guests to be able to get into our meetings as easily as possible, but also we want to minimize the disruption that someone might be able to cause during the meeting. So with that in mind, we've balanced accessibility and security. So you'll be able to download this sheet and copy the settings across into your settings on your account. Okay, here's the important bit, how to set up a meeting. So in the meetings part of your account, you find here a button that says schedule a meeting. Just click on that and Zoom will open up a form for you to fill in with all the details of how you want the meeting to be. So first of all, it needs a title. So I'm going to call it Sunday Service. You could put a description under there. That just helps you to be a little bit more organized, but it's not essential. I want my first Sunday service. I'm going to launch them on April the 18th. So I click on this calendar here, go to April the 18th, and I click on the day, and Zoom automatically inserts the date for me, as you can see there. My service is going to start at 6:30 p.m, but I'm actually going to schedule the meeting for 6 p.m. I just click on the drop-down menus to select 6 p.m. The reason for that is I've allowed myself half an hour before the service is due to start. That means I can go into the meeting, I can check everything's set up properly. It means I can get my speaker in, make sure they know the order of service, find out if there's anything I need to know. And then when I'm ready, I can let the guests in from the waiting room. I'll talk about that in a moment. And only when I'm ready do I open the room, and then we're ready to start the service at 6:30 with everything organized, everything in place. It just gives you some nice breathing space before the meeting is due to start properly. The duration here, I'm going to allow 2 hours, but really Zoom is not going to cut you off after 2 hours. If your meeting goes over that time that you've selected, nothing will happen. It just helps you to be a little bit more organized when you're looking through your list of meetings, when you want to know how long they're expected to last. So just put in an estimate really. Zoom already knows the time zone. Now, here's an interesting bit, recurring meeting. It's a Sunday service. I'm going to do a trial run of 10 services. So I'd like them to recur because I don't want to have to set up 10 individual meetings. So Zoom can help you do that. So you check this box for recurring meeting and you give it the details of how you want that to be. So the recurrence, I want that to be weekly.
I want it to repeat every week. So you could have it every fortnight, for example, but I want it to be weekly. It occurs on a Sunday. Zoom already knows that because the first one was on a Sunday. And then it wants to know how long to go on for. So it needs either an end date, which you click on the calendar, so you could scroll through to choose when that would be. Or, as I'm going to do, I'm going to check this button here and select 10 from the drop-down menu. And so what it will do, it will schedule 10 services for me every week on a Sunday at 6:30. I'm going to move down now onto security, because that's the next thing that we're going to look at here. Don't worry about registration, by the way. Security. Zoom introduced 2 security features that you have to have at least one of. The first one is the waiting room. So the waiting room is like a queue that people are held in before they can be allowed into the meeting. So you can be in the meeting in the Zoom room itself, and you will see a list of people who are in the waiting room. They can't see you, you can't see them, you can just see a list of their names. That gives you the opportunity to be in the room, get everything sorted out, as I just said, and then let them in. It also means that you can look at the list, and if there are people on there that you don't want to be in the meeting, you don't have to let them in. So that's why it's a security feature. It keeps people on the other side of the door until you decide that it's okay to let them in. The other option is to have a password. In Zoom, it's called a passcode. If you click here, it automatically generates a passcode. So for these meetings, someone is going to have to enter 272595 to get in. You can change that to something else, such as service, spell, and that will be a password that people have to use to get in. We advise having a waiting room, because having that breathing space at the beginning before the service is due to start is really helpful. It just allows you to be confident that everything is set up. It allows you the chance to check the waiting room, look out for your speaker arriving, bring the speaker in, have a chat with them, and then say, okay, I'm going to let the guests in. And then you can admit people into the meeting. You don't have to have a passcode if you have a waiting room, but you have to have one of the two. We don't worry about requiring authentication to join. Video. I have them switched off by default here. And that means that when someone logs into the meeting, their webcam will be switched off. It's just a polite thing to do so that they don't have the shock of suddenly seeing them on the screen. And it just gives you a chance to just prepare, just to make sure that there's nothing behind you that you don't want anybody to see. You might want to do a final check of your hair, like I do sometimes. But if it's switched off, they can then switch it on when they feel ready. It's just a way of helping people to feel comfortable. For audio, I've just got computer audio switched in. There is an option for people to log into your meetings on a telephone or both. I've just switched it on to computer audio here because I've just found it can be quite disruptive when people are joining by phone. It's quite difficult for them to control their experience. So we're encouraging people to join by computer, tablet, device, whatever. So I keep it on computer audio. Let's look now at meeting options. Allow participants to join anytime. I leave that unchecked. If you leave it checked, it means that people can enter the meeting before you even get there, providing there's no waiting room, that is. And I don't want people to do that. I think it's just important that you have full control over your meeting. So leave that unchecked. They will be held in a queue or the waiting room if you haven't started the meeting. You'll see already I've got checked mute participants on entry. Make sure that's checked. When people come into a meeting, sometimes they're talking to other people in the room. Sometimes you can hear them moving around, getting their chair into the correct position. You can hear background noise such as TV, traffic, dogs barking, you name it, I've heard it. So I like to have their microphone switched off. You don't then have the constant interruption of people's background noise and echo when they come into a meeting. It's so much more comfortable doing it that way. The other things you don't need to worry about because they're for different types of meeting, and you don't need to worry about alternative host either. Once you've entered all that information, click on save, and Zoom will show you a summary of all the things that you've put in. Sunday service, April the 18th, 6 p.m. Every week on Sunday, 10 occurrences. Then we've got the meeting ID. That's important because people will need the meeting ID to enter the meeting. We can see here in the security section that we've got a waiting room, but no passcode. There's the invite link. So if people click on that link on the 18th of April at 6 p.m. or after, they will go to the meeting and they will be held in the waiting room. The video's off and participants are muted on entry. So we can see that we've got all the details that we entered summarized. Here we have an option for copy invitation. If you click on that, you see this box appears and it gives me a list of all the 10 services that I've scheduled. And here at the bottom, this is the important bit. Join the Zoom meeting on this link or use that meeting ID. And those are the things that you'll be sharing. So you might be sharing them in an email, on a post on social media, or however you share your information with your congregation or potential congregation. So those are really important bits of information to have. You can click on copy the meeting invitation and that will copy it to your clipboard, and then you can paste it into an email, for example. So when I want to let people know about my meeting, this is the information that I share. The meeting ID and the invite link. If you want to change something to do with your meeting, you can edit at the bottom. If you've got a recurring meeting, bear in mind that you can edit each individual meeting in the series or all of them. I want to edit all of them. I've decided now that I want to add a password. So I go back down to the security section, I check passcode, and I'm going to set the password as service. Go down to the bottom, I save it, and I get another summary of that meeting. Now you see the invite link has changed because in my settings, I ask Zoom to combine the password into the link. So that's the link here, and it's got the password built into it. So that's an all-in-one link that someone can click and they won't need a password to get in. A little bit about the idea of the waiting room and the passcode in Zoom now. If you are going to use a passcode, and you are publicizing your meeting on social media, you are going to have to publicize the passcode as well for people to get in, which rather defeats the object of having one in the first place. If you want to be extra secure, then you could share the link to the meeting or the Zoom ID to the meeting on your social media, and then you could ask people to email you for the passcode separately, so you're not sharing it publicly. That's a lot of extra work, and you just might not have the time to do that. And it's also creating a barrier for people accessing your service. Obviously, we want as many people to be able to access your services as possible and as easily as possible as well. So I would argue that if you just have a waiting room, then that is enough. If you have a waiting room, it creates a barrier between you and the guests who are waiting. They're held in a queue, and you choose when you are ready to let them in. We'll look shortly at options that you have to take people out of a meeting if they are causing a disruption. But my argument is, when you're setting up a meeting, a waiting room is enough. It's important to know how to start your meetings once you've gone to the trouble of scheduling them. The first method is to go to zoom.us and log in using your email address and password, and go to the meetings tab. You see a list of any meetings that you've scheduled, and then next to each meeting you'll see a button that says start the meeting. It does what it says on the tin. Click on that and it will begin. When you install Zoom on your computer or laptop, you will get the Zoom console installed. Just going to indicate that here. There it is. And it will look something like that. You have a number of options across the top or here. I'm going to go to meetings. It's got a little clock symbol next to it. When I click on it, I then see a list of any meetings that are forthcoming. So here you can see a healing service that I've got next. And below that is the Sunday service that we scheduled a moment ago. And then here we have a start button. So when you're ready to start, you click on the start button and everything will open and you will be in your meeting as the host. We're going to take a guided tour now around the Zoom window to become more familiar with the various controls. It's worth noting that I'm on a Windows machine and Nathan, who will present the next section, is on a Mac. We've done that so that you can see how visually the windows do look a little bit different, but essentially everything is called the same thing and things are in the same place. But we know that some of you use different machines, so we wanted to include that difference. We're going to work our way from left to right, and I'm going to start by moving down to the button that has a little microphone icon on it. There we are, mute, and that switches the microphone on and off. This is useful, for example, if you're chairing and you have your speaker doing the address. If you've got background noise, for example, traffic noise, or your phone rings a lot, or your doorbell rings a lot, or there are other people in the building that are moving around, making noise, you can switch that off like this. So I just switched my microphone back on. You'll notice that when I started to talk, when I was on the mute setting, that Zoom flashed up a warning advising me that it was switched off. So that's a useful thing that Zoom does. But if you've ever been in a Zoom meeting, there's always somebody who forgets to switch their microphone on. Quite often it's me. The same thing happens with the stop video. If you click it, it just switches off my webcam, so I can't be seen. I can still be heard if my microphone is on. I click it again and my webcam switches on again. That's useful if you need to do something without being seen. I don't know, maybe you want to adjust your tie or an item of clothing or something like that. But it can be useful to give yourself a bit of privacy temporarily. If I move on here to the security button, you can see I have the option to lock a meeting. Some people like to do that when the meeting started and they don't want to let anybody else in. Clicking on lock meeting, and there you see the meeting is locked. It's the same as closing the door to a meeting room and locking it. No one can get in. If you click on security again, you can click on lock meeting again, and it unlocks the room if you change your mind. You have some options there to allow the participants to unmute themselves. Obviously, if there's a demonstration or it's a discussion, you'll need people to be able to switch on their microphones. But here it's switched off because I don't want my guests to be able to switch their microphone on, because I don't want them to interrupt my speaker when they're doing their address. Participants, if I click on that, you'll see that a box opens, and that gives me a list of everybody who's in the room. Nathan will cover that shortly, but it gives you a list of everybody who is there. The chat box is open by clicking the chat button, which is a little speech bubble with chat written underneath it. Click on that and it opens here. I can put a message in there and enter, and it sends that message to everybody in the room who's got the chat box open. You can access an extra menu here. So again, you can make sure that people are muted when they come into the meeting. You can lock the meeting from there as well. And again, we've got that option here again to allow participants to unmute themselves. One option that you can do with the participants box and the chat box, the little downward chevron there, click on that and you can click on pop out, and then you can move the box around the screen. Same there with the chat box, pop out, and you can have them floating around. Sometimes people like to do that because it gives them a little more space and they can organize their screen as they wish to. And sometimes I use two screens in a meeting as well, my laptop screen and an additional monitor, and perhaps I might put them on different screens. I'm just going to get rid of them for a moment and we'll move along the toolbar. The next option is if you want to record your meeting. So obviously I'm recording at the moment and I've got the pause and the stop controls there. But if I wasn't, you would see the option to record the meeting. Next to that, we have breakout rooms. I'm not going to cover that now because that's not really needed in a service situation. It just creates additional breakout rooms where you can put people in to have separate discussions, for example. The reactions button is very important in the service. I'm just going to click on it. And you will see here that there is the option to raise the hand. I'm going to click on that now. And you can see in the corner of my screen, that hand has appeared. This is useful during the demonstration. If the speaker is giving out evidence and then asks if anybody recognizes it, you can then invite your participants to raise their hand. If you look at the participants box here, you can see that one person has raised their hand, which is me, and that is there next to my name. So you will see in your list of participants who's got their hand up. So that is really useful for getting through the demonstration as efficiently as possible. There is a more button here, and that just gives me the option to stream this meeting on Facebook or YouTube. You probably won't need to do that. If your screen is quite small and you don't have enough room on your screen for all of these controls at the bottom on the toolbar, have a look in the More button, because sometimes if you run out of space, Zoom puts them into that More menu. So that 3 dots there, click on that and you will see anything that doesn't fit onto the toolbar. At the bottom in the corner here is the End button, and that will end the meeting. So that's something that you only need to do once the service is finished and all your business has been conducted. If you click on it, it doesn't end suddenly. So if you do it by accident, all is not lost. You can cancel, but here it gives you the option to end the meeting for all, which is what you will need to do when you have finished your service. Just going to cancel that. So those are the main Zoom controls that you will see on your screen and that you'll be using during a meeting or a service. I'm going to hand over now to Nathan, who is going to show you how these controls are used practically during a service.
The video, we're going to be looking at how we can best utilize the Zoom functions before the service even begins. So we're going to go into the Zoom meeting, the service as the host, and set up and prepare for the service to begin. So you should have already looked through how to schedule a Zoom meeting or Zoom service and extract the information to be able to share it with your congregation and other members of the public. So the first thing that we're going to do, of course, is open the Zoom meeting. And for the purposes of this video, I've created a meeting called Spiritualist Church here that you can see on the left. And so to start the meeting, we click on it so it's highlighted in blue, and then click Start over here. And when you click Start, your Zoom room will open and you'll be able to see a different screen. So this is the Zoom room. This is where your service is going to take place, and you can see down the bottom here you have lots of different controls. We have mute, start, stop video, which is self-explanatory. We have security, participants, chat, screen share, record, raise hand, and also there's an option here on mine called breakout rooms. The two things that we're going to be looking at the moment, to keep it quite simple, is participants and also share screen. So we're going to be looking at how, as the host, you can manage the waiting room and admit people into your service. We're going to be looking at how we can share different functions like our sound, our music, and also any visuals. We're going to look at how we can allocate other people as co-hosts to support the service. And we're also going to be looking at how we can mute all participants just to make the service run a little bit more smoothly. So we've opened the room, but of course, at the moment, as the host, I'm the only one here. And a list of participants you will be able to see is in the participants tab down here. So if I click on that, a new window opens, a new box, and it says participants. And in this box, it will list all the participants in your meeting. And as you can see at the moment, Nathan Paul, the host, that's me, I'm the only person in the room. So of course we're going to want others to join us. We're not going to be wanting to sit on our own for a couple of hours. You're going to have lots of people coming into your service. And when anyone tries to join your service, they will be held in a waiting room. And that's a preset setting on Zoom for security, which just means they get a nice message saying the host will let you in a moment, and then you have the option to look through the waiting room and admit everyone or admit certain people at different points. And that's really useful because if you go onto your service early to set it up, you might have any exponents that are working at your service, other members of the committee who are going to come in, so you can just allow them to come in while you get everything sorted. So when someone tries to join your Zoom room, they get held in the waiting room. And that option, as you can see now, has just come up on my screen because I've just entered the room on another device. So we have this waiting room tab now, and we can see that Jay Smith is waiting to come into the meeting. So at the moment, I'm still the only one in the meeting. I'm still the only participant. And I have a couple of options here now. I can either remove Jay Smith, and I would advise that you only remove people if you really, really need to, because unless you change the options at zoom.us, that person will never be able to come into your meeting again if you're using a recurring meeting for your service. So only remove if you really want to and really need to. Next to remove, we have admit. So if I was to click this button, it would allow Jay Smith into the room, into the meeting, and then they would join me under participants. And when you have more than one person join a waiting room, you will also get a little option up here that will say admit all. It's not there at the moment, but when you have multiple people, just to make it easier, you can scroll through the list, see everyone who's there, and admit them all at the same time. So, just to show you that again, you can see here, because it's highlighted orange now, that there's someone waiting in the waiting room, and we also have this banner up here as well that says to admit. So to get to the waiting room, we click on participants, and the waiting room is here, just above the people in the meeting. So let's let Jay Smith into the meeting. Smith has joined us, so we can see their screen now, and they will move from that waiting room into participants, and they would have joined me in the meeting. So you can see at the moment, because there's no one in the waiting room, that waiting room option on the participants tab has disappeared, but it will reappear each time someone comes into your waiting room. So let's pretend just for a moment that Jay Smith is another member of the committee or a volunteer that's going to come and help me for the evening. Because as the host, you're there to oversee the evening, and you have the opportunity to mute and unmute people, you have the opportunity to stop their video, you have the opportunity to admit people into the waiting room, remove them if you need to, share your screen, share your sound. So there's quite a bit going on. So it's always helpful to have a co-host or a number of co-hosts in the meeting with you to be able to support you, especially if you're chairing and you're focusing on that. And the great thing with Zoom is you can have as many co-hosts as you want. So you can have as many people there to help you with the service as you want to. But of course, you need to give them permission to be co-host. And there's a couple of ways in which we can do that. The first way, which I'm going to show you, is by clicking on the Participants tab. You can see here that we've got Jay Smith. If we move along to more, click on that, we get a drop-down menu and it says Make Co-host. So if we click Make Co-host, we will have a little other screen that pops up to ask us to confirm that decision. Let's make Jay Smith a co-host, and then you will be able to see that Jay Smith is now a co-host. So I'll just remove that for a moment to show you the other way that we can do that. And the other way that we can do that is in gallery view, as we are now, so side-to-side screens. We have the option here in the top right-hand corner with the three dots. We click on that, drop down menu, make co-host there again. And again, the same confirmation, let's make Jay Smith a co-host. So now Jay Smith as the co-host has also the same opportunity to be able to mute and unmute people, stop their video, remove, admit, and all of the things that the host can do just to support the service to run a little bit more smoothly. And also, if people don't understand how to use the raise hand function and things like that, which we will go through at another point, then they can be looking through the screens to support you to see whose hands are raised, etc., etc. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at doing is how we can share our computer screen and computer sound so everybody can hear or see what we're doing. Spiritualists love a good song, and working online via Zoom or running services online via Zoom is no different. We love a good song. So the easiest way to do this through Zoom is to share our computer sound, which means that everybody who joins you for your service, your congregation, are going to be able to hear the music that you play on your computer. Now, it's really important to do this that you have the application that you usually use to play music open in the background, and there's of course many different applications that you can use, but when you have that open in the background, it's very, very simple to get to on Zoom. So the first thing that we're going to do is share our screen, and then you can see here we have at the top Basic, Advanced and Files. If we click on Advanced, we have an option to share computer audio here, the third one across. So we click on that to make it highlight blue, click share, and we get a notification at the top saying you are sharing computer sound, and it gives us an option to stop share. When you see this little speaker and that banner at the top, it means that you're sharing your sound. So any music that you play in another application on Zoom, everyone else in the congregation will be able to hear it as well. Now, it's really important that we use that option, because if you were to play your music on another device and rely on your computer's microphone to be able to pick up the music and share it with everyone else, it becomes quite distorted. So if you're sharing your sound and you've got this green banner at the top, you know that your congregation are going to hear the music perfectly. That's important. So we can stop share, and we go through that one more time. So we click on share screen. We're already on advanced now because I was just here, computer audio, share. And now we're sharing computer sound. So it's as easy as that. So once you're sharing your computer sound, you can click play on your other application, and everyone will be able to hear your music perfectly. Some people also like to share their screen, a visual at the start of the service to welcome everybody in, to ask them to remain muted, and while they play music before the service begins. Other people may use it for sharing notices, etc. But if you want to share any visuals, there's also an option to share screen. Similarly to the music, it's important that you have your PowerPoint presentation or whatever screen that you want to share open already in the background. So I've got a PowerPoint screen that I've already opened in the background, and then once I've got that done, it's really, really easy to share that screen on Zoom. So we're going to be using the share screen option again. So we click on share screen. This time it's going to be in the basic tab, so the first tab that we were on before. And you can see already on the second line here, the only one is my Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. So you'll get a snapshot of the screens that you have open on your computer, and then you can click on which one to share. So I've got my PowerPoint open. I'm going to highlight the PowerPoint presentation. Now, if you want to share music at the same time, you can click share sound down here, so you can display the visual and the music at the same time. And we click share. And as you can see, the screen changes. We now have our welcome screen open on, and everybody can now see that screen. And the screen that I'm using is the screen that is used for the members only divine services on a Sunday morning on the SNUI. So it's just a little visual that shows you who the chairperson is going to be, who the mediums are going to be, a little thank you for joining the service. And some people like to use them, so that option is there as well. And you can see here that the toolbar moves to the top, and we have that green banner that says you are screen sharing. And because we also clicked share computer sound in that bottom left hand corner, we have the option to share sound as well. And you'll be able to know that because you have that little speaker there again. So just for a moment, we're going to stop share, and we're going to do that again. Share screen, click on your presentation, click on the screen that you want to share sound down here if you want that option as well, and share. And then that screen opens up, and now everybody who's in your meeting will be able to see that as their main screen. Okay. The final thing that we're going to be looking at today is how we can mute all participants or withdraw their permission to unmute as well. So this is an option as the host and co-host that you have the ability to do to make the service run a little bit more smoothly. Now, I'm sure a year into the pandemic, as we are now, you have been in an online service, a service on Zoom, where someone has accidentally unmuted themselves. You can hear the dog barking, you can hear the TV blaring, you can hear the kettle whistling, and it just distracts from the service. So when I'm chairing a service or when I'm hosting a service, I like to remove everyone's permission to unmute themselves, which means that they need the host permission or a co-host permission to unmute themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that when it gets to the point of communication with any exponent who's working, that they can't talk to them. They absolutely can. They just need the host or co-host permission first. So the way that we can do this as the host, and the co-host can do this as well, is click on the Participants tab. You'll be able to see by my microphone going up and down that I'm unmuted and I'm talking. And you'll have that on everyone or on every participant that's in the room. So if anyone's unmuted, it will show like this microphone here that you can see just above my cursor. So to mute everyone and remove their permission to unmute, we go down and click this option in the middle at the bottom, mute all. And then a new window pops up that says mute all current and new participants. I like to do this before everyone comes into the service, before I admit everyone, because it not only takes away permission for the people that are in the meeting now, but anyone who joins that service, they will also be muted and have their permission to unmute taken away from them. So we can see mute all current and new participants, and we have this option here, allow participants to unmute themselves. Now, if that box is ticked, anyone's able to unmute themselves at any point during the service. If you untick that box, you're taking away that permission. So now a host, a co-host has to ask them to unmute before they can interact and before you're able to hear them. And it just makes the service run a lot more smoothly. So we've unticked that box, we've taken that permission away, and then we're going to click mute all, and that will then mute all current and new participants. So now you don't have to worry that someone's going to accidentally hit unmute and you're going to hear the chaos that is their house at 6:30 on a Sunday or whenever your service may be. So that's just a couple of points on Zoom to help you open up the service as the host, manage the waiting room, allocate co-hosts, share your computer sound, share your computer screen, and also look at taking away that permission to unmute everyone. So we just do that one more time. Participants, mute all. That box will be ticked. Untick that box, mute all, and then it will mute everyone. So I hope this helps, and best of luck.
So now we've taken you on a journey through Zoom. We hope that that's helped to expand your knowledge and give you a bit of confidence that it is possible and it is within reach for your church or centre to be delivering services over Zoom. The help's there if you need it, so please contact us. Our contact details are on the screen now. But also you might find that you want a different perspective. And for that reason, it's really helpful to use Google to find extra sources of support. YouTube in particular is brilliant because there are many more video tutorials that will focus in on certain aspects of Zoom. Perhaps there's something that you're not quite sure of in particular. If you search for that on YouTube, there's bound to be someone who's had that problem before and will happily show you with a video. The Zoom website itself at zoom.us has got a knowledge base, and you can search, and it's got very clear step-by-step instructions and often videos that will guide you through as well. Remember, we focused on the things that will help you to deliver a spiritualist service online, but there might be other things that you want to know about Zoom. And so looking on the Zoom website, on YouTube, and generally searching for it on the internet will be helpful. And also Zoom is constantly being updated, bringing in new features, bringing in new controls. So if something changes, then it's good to keep your knowledge up to date. So keep checking the Zoom website and searching for help, and give us a call if you need any extra support. Our best advice to you is to play with Zoom. Just do practice. It may be a member of your committee who is leading on Zoom, or perhaps there's a member of your church who has the IT skills and knowledge to help you deliver services online. But whoever it is, it's helpful if you get together as a group in a Zoom meeting and have a play around with the controls, work out where they are, what they do, and to get used to speaking to a webcam. Can feel a little unnerving to begin with, but you soon get used to it. Zoom's a fantastic tool that we have to stay in touch with each other. Learning how to use it is an incredible thing that we can do. It's helping us to reach out to new people. And for the people who can no longer get to our church, it's a lifeline to them too. So there are many, many reasons that can motivate us to start using Zoom. Because you watched to the end of this video, I hope that means you're sufficiently enthusiastic in having a go. We're here to help, so get in touch and let us know how you get on. Take care. Bye-bye.